An Israeli ban on the United Nations charity UNRWA comes into effect, with grave fears as to what it'll mean for the Palestinian community in Gaza, with aid agencies saying they don't have the capacity to fill the void. Liz Allcock is head of protection with the charity Medical Aid for Palestinians, and she joins us now from Gaza. Hi there, Liz. So what is the banning of UNRWA going to mean for your ability to operate and offer help to people there?
It really will have an unparalleled impact on not only MAP and our ability to deliver health and well-being to people here, but across the entirety of the humanitarian response here. UNRWA delivers, I believe, more than half of the food aid for people, 2/3 of the primary healthcare services. It employs 13,000 people. It's not only pivotal to the humanitarian response, it comes at a time in the humanitarian response when, of course, we have, we believe, 500,000 people who have returned on foot to the north of Gaza, where needs are absolutely immense. So it's a really devastating day for the humanitarian response, for the community, and also for Palestinian national identity, of which UNRWA really is a cornerstone.
So how do you plan to try and fill the gap left by UNRWA?
Well, we can't fill the gap. I think that's the whole point. And nobody has the mandate for Palestine refugees. UNRWA does. What we can try and do is continue that which we have been doing, which is to try and provide, excuse me, health, sorry, health services, protection services, water, food, and other services in the areas where we have access and where we're able to reach in a safe way to the maximum effect possible. But we and no one else can fill the gap, and I think that is the key point. That at a time when needs yet again are surging, we are seeing and yet another obstacle thrown in the way of the humanitarian response and the needs of the people in Gaza.
So the ceasefire has now been in place for a week and a half or so. As part of that deal, aid was allowed back into the territory. Have you seen much of that?
We have seen an increase in the amount of aid and the variety of aid that is coming in. It's very difficult for people to access it because the total destruction of critical infrastructure, as you can see on your screen, and our inability to deliver that and people's safe ability to access it. This is being targeted in areas, including those which have been 90% totally destroyed. So we have huge contamination, for example, of unexploded ordnance. And there's already been, I believe, 3 incidents, including the killing of a child due to the presence of unexploded bombs, for example. And the roads just aren't there, as you can see, to be able to access the aid. It's also not really, the amount of aid is important, but the type of aid is really important. And there are obviously restrictions on that, which still pose a significant obstacle for us to be able to serve the community effectively.
As you say, people have begun to return to what's left of their homes. How are they coping with what they're finding?
I think the initial joy that people felt at the prospect and the journey of returning to their home has largely been tempered by the awful realization that for most there is nothing to return to. And we always said in conversation with colleagues, the vast majority of people we spoke to said that they would return just to pitch a tent on the rubble of their home. And that's what people have been trying to do, but then there aren't enough tents. So we're at a stage now whereby people are sleeping in the streets and the tents are not durable enough to be able to be transported. People have to walk on foot. We don't have the significant numbers required to be able to service 500,000 people. So we have huge obstacles, and people are, we're trying to establish the absolute bare minimum that is needed for a decent life. and we're not able to do it. I had one colleague describe the situation as coming from south to north is like going from heaven to hell. And I think what's telling in that is that the south is not heaven. It's been awful. It's been absolutely dire. So the situation is obviously much, much worse there than people anticipated. And we have a huge, monumental task ahead of us to be able to serve that community in a way that does them justice.
How are you coping, Liz? Because you've been there with everybody else and stuck in the same struggle for survival as everybody else.
Well, I'm obviously very lucky that I have a passport that enables me to go in and out of the territory. My colleagues, every single one of them, doesn't have that, and nor do the 2.2 million people who are effectively trapped in a war zone. So I'm quite fine. I'm here to do a job, and I'll do that to the best of my ability and support my colleagues and the community as best I can. But people around me are really, really struggling. A colleague described it as, Liz, it's like being a truck that's being pushed uphill and the hill just doesn't end, a kind of Sisyphus effect. People are absolutely exhausted. Certainly the sense of relief that came with the ceasefire, I would say has now passed into despondency.
And are you concerned that the UNRWA ban could undermine the Hamas-Israel ceasefire and lead to the resumption of hostilities?
I do think that UNRWA, my maths isn't very good, but since 1949 has provided stability to the best of its ability in a very challenging environment, and provided essential services for so many people where no one else has been able to do so, because we haven't been able to, as an international community, facilitate and support and engage with a meaningful process for an effective Palestinian state. That is the only alternative. So failing that and failing the presence of UNRWA, people are, of course, worried about how they're going to survive day to day. This ceasefire is temporary. I think that's and time is running, and people really want desperately to have a sense of security and safety beyond this initial few weeks. And I think that's something that's definitely at the forefront of people's minds.